George W. Bush, and the W stands for I told you so. Oh, and Sarah Palin's middle name is I told you so too. Obama has no excuse to not know what to do about ISIS or what's happening with Russia, unless he wants these factions to succeed at what they're doing, which I'm kind of thinking he does.
I think what's happening. Propaganda.
While Bush was president, the liberals kept saying that Bush's war is a quagmire, like Vietnam. If these liberals knew so much about Vietnam, then they should have known better than to insist on pulling the troops out. The liberals acted like they cared so much about the Vietnamese and accused our troops of being baby killers. And when they got their way and the troops were pulled out, that's when the real slaughter of the Vietnamese began. Oh, but the liberals care so much. They're so much better than the rest of us because they care. And that sanctimonious self-righteousness of theirs always ends up getting more people killed. Oh, and it also gets more people unemployed. It gets us deeper in debt and deficit, and it just simply makes things worse. Bush, who actually learned a little something from history, did not want to make the same self-righteous mistake as liberals and pull the troops out of Iraq until the enemy was decimated. A war that was unnecessarily harder to fight because of all the left-wing political opposition, which put our troops in even more danger. But here comes Obama, who repeated the same thing that got the Vietnamese slaughtered. He pats himself on the back as he withdraws the troops from Iraq without certain victory. And the enemy has grown back like a hydra. Liberals made this big deal about Bin Laden. We need to get Bin Laden, and brag about Obama getting Bin Laden, when Bush and the rest of the adults knew that Bin Laden was hardly the full scope of the war on terrorism. Terrorism would not stop with the death of Bin Laden. In fact, it's most likely going to get worse without certain securities in place. It satisfies some sense of closure, but still leaves open the coming of big problems that are as wide as that O-hole we got on the border. ISIS, being able to say, we're among you in your country, was what Bush was trying to avoid. Man, Osama Bin Laden isn't even from Iraq. Bush just wants Iraq's oil. And just a whole bunch of self-righteous nonsense to make themselves seem morally superior about being against war. The war isn't about oil. Yeah, let's waste a whole bunch of money and sacrifice the lives of sons and daughters in uniform for something we already have plenty of. The war was about containment, but you self-righteous liberals totally interfered with that, with your war for oil slander, and containment is now disintegrated. While you bought the idea about the war in Iraq being insignificant, you don't think it's kind of strange that these murderous Muslim militants want Iraq so very badly? And do you think that once they've achieved that objective, their campaign ends there? It's weird. Why do liberals think they're against war? Liberals think they're against war because people get killed. They think war is a bunch of senseless killing, and they oppose people getting killed. That's understandable, and a great reason to be opposed to war. That's one of the reasons why I hate war, because people get maimed and killed. But if people getting killed is what liberals have a problem with, then they really should have a problem with oppressive regimes and militants who murder their own people. That's not war, that's genocide. And it takes war to stop genocide. Oh, but I forgot. Liberals can't tell the difference between who fights for what's right and who fights for what's wrong. Anyway, y'all wanted a president who represented your self-righteousness against war. And you thought that if we had a hip and cool president who talked about peace and would say things like no nukes and we need to withdraw our troops because this is the new and improved America and everybody's gonna like us because we're gonna apologize for being nowhere near as evil as other countries, yet we're gonna apologize for their evils projected onto us. And maybe if we bear the image of their evil and apologize for it, they'll like us and we'll live in peace. Wrong. Now they're even more emboldened. Y'all have been suckered by Hollywood in some slow clap ending where people bury the hatchet and two opposing factions hug it out. Or you've let them sucker you into thinking that it's American greed that's the real enemy and we deserve to be attacked by people just trying to protect themselves from us. Why do you listen to liberals who get rich off of make-believe, Their business is make-believe, and their job is to tell you fantasies. And being that their livelihood is fantasies, it usually turns out that their outlook on life is a fantasy. And too many don't know when to clock out. And too much of America has been listening to them. Well, because you've been listening to their fantasies, this is the reality now. Nations and militants are much less afraid of bullying other territories because they're not afraid of a country that has a president who says, let's neuter ourselves. And militants are more confident to bring the war to our streets because we have a liberal government that doesn't respect the people's rights to protect themselves according to the Second Amendment. So hey, Obama and the rest of you gun control libs, since the war on terror is going to be sprouting up on American soil, how about y'all back off the people's Second Amendment rights so we can have a little more leverage to protect ourselves? You liberals have listened to Michael Moore about the Patriot Act. Y'all don't seem as uptight about Obama, the IRS, and the new healthcare system storing your information. Now the terrorists are emboldened to conduct communications that could very well lead to the murder of any of us. You bought into the idea that the Patriot Act was about spying on you. Well, if you're engaged in communications and transactions that are in line with certain patterns that could lead to the harm or death of others, then that evidence has to be presented to get a warrant. You being spied on over the internet is about the same as a cop being on a street corner. They have to have some sort of presence to deter people from breaking the law. I know, oftentimes people feel like cops aren't there when you need them. Make up your mind. When cops are present, you're mad. And when they're not present, you're mad. And it's the same thing with the internet. There has to be a security presence. But thanks to liberals, not only has the security presence online been weakened, our security presence has now actually been turned against us. I'm Alfonso Rachel with Zonation, and the liberals and pacifists and left-wingers and the war is not the answer people are always the ones who realize too late that there are things much worse than war. Let's neuter ourselves.